So, Steve, how is your day going there? You're dialing in from Brooklyn?
Yes, I'm in Dumbo. I have a little studio here in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and it's good. It's hot here. It's hot, but it's good.
It's hot in her. Is Our World is 3D entirely recorded there in the Brooklyn studio?
No, it was done in Queens, a different studio, but using all my and our stuff, and we did it ourselves, and I mixed the record also.
It is the first full-length album from Hurricane Bells that is instrumental. Did you know outright, hey, this is a Hurricane Bells album and I want instrumental, or evolution there?
No, it was planned like that, and it is a bit of a reaction to my day job, which is doing music for TV commercials, essentially. Sometimes movies, but the money that gets me and my family food is Subaru ads and things like that. So I remember talking to Colin and Christian, are the two other guys that I made the record with, and talking about making instrumental music. We had played a lot of shows together, and I always felt like I'm a bit of a control kind of guy. If we got my other band Longwave or Hurricane Bells initially was just me, and I kind of needed it the way I wanted it to. And with Christian and Colin, they were so good that I realized I should let them do more of naturally things that they do. So we talked about doing some other music that we hadn't done before. And at one point, I remember Colin, the drummer, said, well, if we're going to do an instrumental, should we think about it in terms of something that could be in a car commercial or something? And, maybe to the detriment of the finances of the other members or my own. But I said, no, no, we should just make it beautiful and music that we would like to listen to. So I may have sabotaged that in one direction, but on the other hand, I love to listen to it, and I would not like to listen to it if it were designed for that kind of purpose, I think.
This next thing I'm curious about, it's intended to be a compliment. At first, it's going to sound a little backhanded, and then you're like, no, it's a compliment. So I think that you have a difficult situation when it comes to songwriting, because not only does it have to be a good song that's catchy, because people associate catchiness with your music, but it also has to sound cool. It has to have unique sounds. Your history, you can't just plug a guitar in and go ready. There's pedals and there's amp specifications and there's guitars and all that. And this is an instrumental album. So is it really, really hard to have a good composition, but then go, but does it sound cool enough? Does this pass the muster?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I'm hitting that mark every time. So that's very nice of you to say. But the funny thing about the sounds and things is that if you get something that sounds kind of fun, that can write the song for you too, right? So it's like you get a broken kind of speaker on a guitar amp and you play a couple chords and it's whereas if you just play that on an acoustic guitar, it'd be a kind of boring sound. So yeah, I think they're kind of interchangeable sometimes, especially with something like an instrumental record. I don't know what you would write. I mean, you could write themes on a piano maybe, but you kind of have to write with the sounds you're going to be using anyway, I think.
That was actually my next question. I've heard of songwriters, some of my favorite songwriters, who always have a guitar on stage, but they write the songs on piano. Even if there's no piano in the song, is everything always written on a guitar?
Well, for me, the guitar is my best instrument, so don't laugh about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna laugh that the hired gun who real guitar players hire to play lead guitar is not a good guitarist. We need to go on the modesty.
Well, my best instrument is the guitar, so yeah, usually it would be the guitar. But especially for like doing a TV commercial or something, a piano, you don't want a guitar. Guitar is just one sound you could use in the world or palette of sounds that is available. So, but for me, usually it would be the guitar, unless either A, it needs to be no guitar, and I would maybe start on the piano, or B, sometimes the guitar is too easy in a way. I've played it for so many years of my life that it might be more fun to like pull out a crazy toy or something. Like this is like a $100 drum machine, but you put this through a distortion pedal or something, and all of a sudden like you start hearing harmonics or things that are happening, and you're like, oh, I kind of hear what key this is in. And then you get the guitar maybe or something like, and then before you know it, you have a little song that's off of this little box.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, usually it would be the guitar for me, but sometimes I might consciously like avoid it just because I get bored. You know.
Do you ever get directive when you're writing for commercial or those kinds of projects that go no guitars? Has that happened?
Well, mostly I do get called for guitar stuff, right? Because that is my main instrument, or by extension, like banjo. I'm looking at from the studio right now, like banjos or acoustic guitars or ukuleles, or you know. So most of the time I get called for something like that. But I do have a piano that's got a lot of character and sounds kind of old, and I can't really get that sound using like a MIDI sample or something. So I've been called a couple times where people say, "Do you still have that?" One guy calls it my three-legged piano, and they ask. They say, "Can you use that on?" I think that would be a great sound for this, whatever. And usually it's like an old, you know, like a whatever Daptones R&B or soul or something kind of sound where it wouldn't sound right if it was like clean, pristine sounds. So
yeah,
usually, yeah, they could totally say that to me for work. No guitar. And that's totally legit. It's like, it's just as legit as saying we want guitar.
Did you start out with piano lessons before you took up guitar?
No, I wish I did. I'd be a lot better. I'm horrible.
You're one of the few people I've ever heard that with, that they weren't forced into piano lessons as a kid. Even if they took one or two and then quit, everyone I know who's a professional musician that I can think of started with a couple of piano lessons.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting thing for you to say to me, because I have two young sons and we have a little piano at home, and that's a timely discussion happening right now. My younger son, we've talked about piano lessons for both the kids. A friend of mine, I was excited for him to do it. He was going to be the teacher, and then now with shows happening again, he's off to work. He's working. He's touring now, so that's a bummer. So my younger son said, "Daddy, I want to play guitar," and I thought, have you thought this through? but yeah, we probably will end up getting piano lessons for the kids, and maybe they're not going to like it. I don't really know. I wish someone had given me piano lessons. I did end up learning music theory and things with the guitar, but
wow, that's harder.
I guess so. I don't know. I definitely was playing guitar pretty well, and my teacher told me, like, you got to learn these skills. And I went back a couple of weeks in a row where he kept telling me, you got to learn this, you got to learn this. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And finally he told me, I'm not going to be your teacher anymore. And I was like, whoa, because I really, really liked my teacher. And so that got me to learn him. But yeah. And plus, you know, power instrumental music probably was huge at the time too. You needed to know how to shred to play that stuff.
Well, speaking of guitar instrumental music, Our World is 3D, the new album.
It's a good one.
from Hurricane Bells. Something I'm curious about is people who read back to your story and trace it know that after Longwave broke up the first time, things were a little slow for you, and you know, what's the next step? And out of nowhere, a Hurricane Bells song winds up in a Twilight movie, and then you're off to the races, and because you know, work leads to more work, and then you're fine. Something I'm curious about, not that I can speak today, is are all the Longwave fans aware of Hurricane Bells? Or are you finding all the time that people don't really know about the two?
No, not at all. Hurricane Bells kind of disappeared because largely, I don't know if Hurricane Bells even had a MySpace. I don't even know. But excuse me, with, you know, at one point I got fed up with Facebook and everything. That's kind of what happened. And we also started, my wife and I had our first son, and it was like, you know, I don't really want to deal with this anymore. And what ended up happening, of course, was that it gets left behind. So part of the putting out these, you know, couple records here, and now there's a Hurricane Bells Instagrams. It doesn't need to be a huge deal, but I just want to plant a flag and say this, put it where someone can find it if they're interested, you know, because there is a little bit of history with Hurricane Bells.
Yeah. And it's been for people following you, the individual Steve Schiltz, there's been a lot of music in the last year or so, because there was this new album, there was an EP from Hurricane Bells that previously came out in Japan only, I believe.
Yes.
There was a Longwave live album. I think there was another instrumental album with toy instruments or custom instruments.
Oh yeah, that's not out yet.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
still in the works. We
Yeah.
saw you pop up on the Blue October album that came out within the last year or so. There might even be other stuff. Was it a prolific period for you, or just a lot of backlog coincidentally coming out in the same time?
Kind of both. Some of the stuff was sitting around for a little while and it wasn't right, it needed to be tweaked or something. And then stuff like the Blue October was brand new, but I could do it from here. I didn't have to, like, this is my studio and I didn't have to go anywhere. And I can for my job, I send files and finish things all the time to people. So
right,
to do a record collaboratively with somebody is actually kind of easy for me. When the other person is also working, and Justin and Eric at Blue October are very hard workers. So that's how they get that stuff done. It doesn't work if you're doing a lot of work and the other person on the other end isn't doing anything. That's how it gets. But
yeah,
with stuff like the Longwave Live, I was able to go and meet with the guy who mixed that, even though the other Longwaves aren't in town. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that we could do over the internet and we were able to do.
Well, that's out. All that output that we just talked about is, aside from your day job of writing stuff almost every day for different spots. So do you not suffer from writer's block, or are you just always able to find some form of music in you when you pick up an instrument?
The second one, I guess. I'm really lucky, especially with the TV stuff. You have to. There's no like. The TV stuff is funny because here in my studio, there's just instruments everywhere. Here, this is there's one of the guitar racks.
One of the guitar racks.
Yeah, here's another one of the guitar racks. So there's a couple. Like here's a room with some amps in it. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
But so a lot of times there's a synth little area over there, bunch of synths. A lot of times what I'll do if I don't know what I'm going to start with, or the initial thing is I will just literally look around the room and walk and think, what might satisfy, because with the ad stuff, I'll get a visual thing. And I've learned to try to be empathetic with that, or, whatever, sympathetic with that rather. And
is that the word you were trying to say? You're talking about synesthesia? Is that the word you're going with?
I don't know. That sounds like a Megadeth record.
It does sound like that. I thought synesthesia is when you could see sound, that you associate colors with particular things you hear.
No, it might just be like, there might be a commercial where, stop me if I'm going too far into this, but there might be just a commercial where it's like, it's a car commercial, right? And like they're driving through the great outdoors and someone asks, they say, we want it to sound like Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, but obviously we can't afford to pay for that.
Yeah.
And so I'll sit there and I'll play along and I'll think, yeah, okay, they're on a road trip, and I'll think, well, maybe it would be better if it was like a spaghetti Western kind of vibe with like kind of thing, and the baritone, like tremolo guitar. And so I'll do two. And then sometimes they'll be like, oh my God, that spaghetti Western thing is exactly what we needed. So that, I don't know where that comes from. That's just like, I would see that what I just told you happened very recently with a Subaru commercial for me. So I don't know where that comes from. Just doing it for years, I guess. You see it and you're like, sometimes they tell you exactly what they want, and then sometimes they think they know what they want, but maybe they need another person that's, the composer to think about maybe an alternative.
I'd have to imagine that's a huge evolution in your creative process, because when you were a major label artist, you probably were thinking, well, I can't write unless I feel something. And then nowadays you're kind of able to channel like, well, this needs to be a thing like this or along these lines, and it has to be done by 7 p.m. and emailed and mixed and given in. So in other words, you've learned from writing about feeling sad because you feel sad, to now going, hey, if I were a person that were feeling sad, this is what it would sound like.
Now it's just the Subaru commercial that makes me feel sad.
No, those are fine automobiles, and we love Subarus. Yes.
What you're talking about is interesting. It's two very different things. So there's the TV commercial stuff, and then there would be something like this Hurricane Bells record, where, as I said, there was a conversation to the effect of, should we try to make it more syncable? Sync, if for anyone doesn't know, is like someone's job is to try to match existing music to a movie or a TV commercial. Yeah. So that was the conversation. Should we make it more like that? And when we said no, we really just, I want to make it like the best, most beautiful music, you know, a little more long form. Some of the songs might be 5 minutes long, or the pieces, or whatever you call them. But that's a different process, because that means, okay, now we can mess around with the ARP synthesizer for an hour, and if we don't get anything, that's okay. But that's not okay in the other world of TV. Like that, there's an hour you just lost that you could be spending making your track really great, because you're competing against a bunch of other people who are also really great, and you have to win, or you don't get, you know, the money. So it's a different thing. That's just strictly like on demand, where the other one is like kind of walking into the creative fog and poking around until something, you stub your toe on something. You know, like, oh right, okay, that's what we need, you know. So it's the few times when I've tried to smash them against each other, like one day I'm working and then the next day I'm working on like actual music, it's pretty jarring, because I could sit here and mess around with pedals on guitar and stuff, but after an hour, if I don't have something, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. So maybe that's a bit of what you're saying, like a writer's block or something, but it isn't I'm doing something wrong. That is what that process is. It's just that I'm so conditioned on some days to think I got to get this done.
Sure. So if the new album by Hurricane Bells has 10 songs on it, does that mean you wrote 10 songs for it?
No, there are 13, but we kept off 3.
Ah, there you go. And that, of course, contrasts from, say, if a Longwave album has 13 songs, what, you probably wrote 17 to 20?
It's the same thing. Yeah, well, it's the same thing with that. Whereas if I do a commercial and I do one track, I only did one. You know, I did my best.
But the amount of time, you know, if you wrote those, I'm making up numbers here, those 17 to 20 songs for the Longwave album, that's probably written over the period of 2.5 years. And then if we look at you in the last 3 months, you've probably written 60 things.
Yeah, and then just in all honesty, then you say to yourself, well, a lot of that wasn't my coolest music, you know, it's just something I had to do by 3 o'clock or something, you know. But sometimes I go back and listen through that and I think, wow, that was really cool. There's a Longwave song called Dreamers Float Away. Dreamers Float Away is the name of the song. And I had pulled out the Juno Roland keyboard for a TV commercial, and I turned it on, and right the sound as it came on, I started playing. I was like, oh, that's cool. And you start playing, like, oh, that's cool. Before you know it, you got a little melody in your head. Like, this has nothing to do anymore. Now, Steve's gone off into that land now. And so I opened up a new Pro Tools session, closed the old one out for the dog food commercial I was working on. You open up the new one, and then you record your idea in with the mic and the keyboard, and then you think, well, shit, that was a half hour. I gotta go back to the job now, you know. So, and then if you finish it some other time, but like sometimes it's cool stuff, and then sometimes it really just is a Ray Charles ripoff.
Well, all that said, when exactly did it become okay, acceptable, and you knew that it was the path of, I'm going to be a musician the rest of my life. I'm going to do. Oh
my God, am I going to be a musician the rest of my life? Is this what it's going to come to?
Where I'm going with that is, a lot of people I know who had record deals in the 90s and the 2000s, eventually they had to get a real job. Then their band would regroup and they kind of became weekend warriors. But the day job was not music in any capacity. Now, I look at what you're doing as being awesome, because it's still making music for a living. You might, love some of your projects and some of your paid gigs more than others per se, but like, you made music your career again when it looked like for a couple of years, hey, maybe that might not be the case. I'm curious when exactly you figured out that, hey, these 1 or 2 opportunities to write an ad, this is not going to be my last time. This is going to be next week and the week after.
Well, I got 2 very good pieces of advice around 2009 or something. That's when the Hurricane Bells original Hurricane Bells song, like the stuff I originally done that was just demos, one of them was in the Twilight movie, you said. So that was a windfall of money for me. At the time, nobody wanted this record I had done. So there was no record label that had signed it. There was no one to split the money with. So when that happened, it was really like winning the lottery in a way for a guy like me. And so my friend Ashton Kylan from Scout, also sings in Hurricane Bells. She told me, because I was buying guitars, I play guitar, right? And she was like, you shouldn't be buying guitars anymore. That's not how you're making money. You should buy microphones and studio and whatever software you need to do this, because that's how you're making money. Because I had been doing sideman gigs on guitar, which is fun to do, but to use a cliche, it's like you're helping somebody else build their house, going on tour with somebody, and it's fun and I love it. But this other thing, it's like you're kind of building your own little thing a little bit. With the TV commercials, you get ASCAP money, which is royalties. Like, so you can build and build and build and build and build. So that was advice that she gave me, which was very nice and good advice. And then the other piece of advice that I remember was that my friend Pete Min told me when I started doing the ad stuff. I was very much like, is this a job? Can I string this together to make a career? Like, what is this? And Pete just said, if they're hiring you and you're winning, because I started like I'd win a couple of these jobs, they'd use the music. He said, if they're hiring you and you're winning, just keep doing it. Like, don't ask any questions about it. And that was 10 years ago.
10 years
so
ago.
I guess that was probably around the time. Yeah, it went from me like hustling for guitar gigs to like eventually no more guitar gigs, because it's just work. I can't fit it in, with my family and other stuff I want to do.
He's doing it. Well, the last thing that I want to know, which has nothing to do with anything that we just spoke about, putting you on the spot here. Do you have a TV recommendation you could pass on if somebody needs a new show to start? And please don't say Peppa Pig or a kids programming thing.
That was my Peppa. Man, I'm sorry, I don't know if I have one. The last one I can really remember that knocked me out that I loved was The Mandalorian, which was not very recent anymore now.
Arguably, it can be if there's another season.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go.
But it won't have Gina in it.
It will not.
I also love the McCartney 1, 2, 3, whatever that with Rick Rubin. I love that. So
okay.
That's more recent. I think that also probably should be a given. Like, it seems like anyone who's a fan of music would probably love that, but I love that too.
An unanticipated follow-up here with McCartney 3, 2, 1. I saw the first 2 episodes, right, and things blew my mind in there that I went, of all the many hours of interviews I've heard with Paul McCartney and the stuff I've read, I've never heard that before. Like when he picks up a guitar and starts playing this unreleased Beatles song. For you, as somebody who's a music encyclopedia, did you learn a lot from that too?
Yeah, but the things that I loved best about that series or that McCartney thing was even almost when he wasn't speaking, I loved when he would just sit there and you'd watch his face and he looked dead serious. And it's like, that's, excuse the French, that's the motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like him, cheesing for the camera, McCartney doing the head bob. Like, I would never, I'm not trying to make fun of that, but like McCartney has the smiley thing and he's always was a good looking Beatle. But when you see him concentrate listening like that, that's when when I saw that, I thought that's where you could visually see how heavy he is. You know what I mean? How like unique, a god standing head and shoulders among other lesser gods. You know what I mean? Nobody could touch him, And then he plays the piano and the drums, and it just sounds so musical. Even he says he's not the best piano player, he's not the best drummer, but the way he plays it, it's like you could write a whole song listening to just his drum beat because he's so musical. It's nothing to do with like knowing all the paradiddles or whatever. It's just like that man just has it in him, Like I would say if he were like a million, I'd be like 1 or 2. I feel like I know what it's like to have the music in me, but not in the way that he does. So when I saw that, I watched like just in awe of watching that.
But something amazing to me is how much incredible timeless music he can write, and he could still write a song like Freedom.
I'm a fan. I don't know. It's all good for me. I like I said, I probably think to him there's no difference at all. Like to him, there's probably no difference between Band on the Run and Hell on Wheels. They're all just songs that he wrote that day or those days that he was working on it. He wrote that 6 months ago. He's on to another one now, you know, like, and that's kind of beautiful.
His equivalent of a Subaru commercial might be Freedom.
Paltrocast.